اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You're very welcome to your program Out of Ignorance with our
guest.
Start with what episode is this?
Seventh episode, alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, guys. Welcome to our 7th episode of Out of Ignorance. Today, inshallah, we have a interesting episode with our guest Khalil Ben Mohamed.
Not Bint, definitely not Bint.
Sorry. Non-Arabic speakers.
So, Akhi Khalil, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Khalil Ben Mohamed. I was born in London to a Tunisian father and an Irish mother, and I've been living in Dublin since the age of 10, which is over 20 years now, alhamdulillah. And I currently am self-employed. I set up my own coaching business, so I'm doing life coaching and clinical hypnotherapy and that kind of stuff. So just working with people and helping people to overcome obstacles, helping people to attain high levels of, whatever it is, confidence or goal achievement or whatever it is that they're seeking in their life, So I guess really, I specialize with working people at a subconscious level. So there's certain people that I work with that may be suffering from addictions, like somebody, for example, might want to quit smoking or quit an addiction to looking at their screen, at their smartphone for spending too much time. So helping people to overcome negative compulsive behavior, I guess, is one of the kind of area of expertise that my business focuses on.
That's a very interesting, very, very interesting job, Akhi.
So
why did you get in it? How did
I get into it? It's kind of a long story, to be honest with you, but part of the reason I got into this, there's many reasons, but one of the reasons I got into this business is because for many years I've been working with my younger brother, who's a professional football player. His name's Khalil Ben Mohamed. He's an established Tunisian national team player, and he currently plays for a club in France called Le Havre. They're a second division team, but they're well known for producing top players. So players like Paul Pogba and Riyad Mahrez played there in the past. So they've got very good kind of facilities and world-class management and all that kind of stuff. So it's a good place for clubs to grow. But before that, he played for the biggest club in Tunisia called the Expriences, or the Arabic name is Strategist. And he was there for 3 years. He won the African Champions League with them twice in a row, back to back. So I guess a lot of my experiences working with him was helping him to be able to perform in very, very high pressure environments, So Taraji, for example, at some of their big games like cup finals and stuff like that, they might have 50,000-60,000 fans there, and the fans are very, very loud, very vocal, a lot of songs, chanting, and sometimes fireworks going off in the stadium and all kind of stuff like that. So it was really important for him to be able to focus and perform. So my kind of contribution to his performances will be helping him to get in a good kind of mental state. So focusing on mental preparation and all that kind of stuff. Alhamdulillah, I kind of learned a lot from doing that with him, and I kind of felt at a certain point in time that if I can do this for Ayman and I can help him to perform in high pressure environments, then I can do this for other people as well, And I know that there are a lot of people out there nowadays that could benefit from the services that I'm offering. And I guess along the my own personal journey, I've become fascinated with personal development and human potential development and all that kind of stuff. So I'm very passionate about it as well, and that's kind of the main reason why I decided to take this path. And I do believe there's a real need for it out there, because as human beings we have phenomenal potential and we're really incredibly capable of achieving incredible things. But unfortunately there are a lot of people that don't achieve what they want to achieve. It's not because they're not capable, it's because unconsciously they might believe that they're not good enough, for example, right? And 95 to 95% or 95 to 99% of our behavior is controlled by the subconscious, So if you believe unconsciously you're not good enough to do something, you're never going to be able to do it.
So what you do basically, you try to change the perspective of people's minds, the way they approach things.
That will be part of it. I guess part of it will be educating people about their own potential, educating them about the fact that when we were children, we were essentially shaped and molded by our environment. So from when we were newborns until the age of 7, right, we were internalizing everything that was happening in our environment, right, subconsciously. So we were literally just recording everything, what our parents said to us, what teachers said to us, what our siblings said to us, what our friends said to us, and we created or shaped what's known as a self-image, right? So each one of us has a self-image, which is the way we see ourselves, and that was formed during the first 7 years of our life, which is known as the formative years, right? Now, the thing about it is, unfortunately, for many of us, people unconsciously internalized negative things, or they may have heard something, like somebody might have called them names, somebody might have said, well, you can't do this, or who do you think you are to be able to do this? And we weren't able to reject that information when we were children. We just had to accept it as fact, right? And then at a later stage, that holds people back. And that's why they say for most people, they spend the first 50 years of their life trying to get over the first 5.
50?
50.
Wow.
People struggle in a big way because somebody said something to them when they were a child, like, you can't do that. And they believed it unconsciously. And as a result of that unconscious belief, they're never able to do it.
But it's very hard to get out of that unconscious belief, though.
There are ways of going around it. And part of my work is educating people about how the subconscious mind actually works and equipping them with the knowledge and the tools and the skills that they need to make changes that they want to make in their own subconscious mind. So there's working with people in an indirect manner like that, but then there's also working with people directly who might not have the time or might not be interested in learning about how their own subconscious mind works, but they want to make some type of change, whether it's, for example, to increase their levels of self-confidence, or to quit smoking, or to overcome a fear, like a fear of heights, for example. Maybe some people might go to like a, what you call it, like let's say they bring their kids out to a theme park, for example, right? Or they go to Paris and the Eiffel Tower is there and the whole family wants to go on the Eiffel Tower, but they've got a terrible fear of heights. Imagine being like a father and your kids all want to climb the Eiffel Tower and you're like, you go ahead, I'll watch from here and take some pictures. Like, sometimes people get into those kind of situations, and they're the kind of people that I can help to overcome these unconscious fears and things that really hold people back all of their life, you know?
So is your work mainly focused on like people who are athletes, or like they're doing something, or like, for example, would you be able to help on normal students? Because for example, I think like one of the things like facing the youth today is laziness. How do you live a productive life? Is it to do with our mindset, because that's why we're lazy, or we're not diligent enough, or we don't have discipline, stuff like that?
Yeah, I can work with anybody on anything, to be honest with you. Like, so whether it's overcoming laziness could be an example. I guess working with somebody to overcome laziness, I'd have to identify or learn how they behave. You know, what do you do every day which is causing the laziness? What are you eating? What are you watching? Do you get what I'm saying? Once I understand how someone spends their time, then it's easier to identify the source of laziness.
So are you helping people change their behavior, or are you helping teach them how to change their own behavior?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So I think there are a lot of people nowadays that, like you said, laziness and procrastination is definitely a challenge for many people nowadays, and I think something that has contributed towards that is smartphones and social media and all that kind of stuff. And that's why I think this line of work is so important, to help people overcome, whether it's procrastination, whether it's laziness, because there's so many distractions out there nowadays, and you know, the more time you spend in procrastination, the less time you're spending on achieving your goals and achieving your full potential as a human being, you know. And that's why I personally believe it's so important for people to understand how their own mind works, and how, for example, negative habits are formed, and to understand that these habits they're simply patterns that are created in the subconscious mind, these neurological pathways connecting in a certain way. And just as those habits were formed, they can also be changed, or you can override them, basically, you know. I think it's so important for people to kind of understand that you know, you're not stuck for the rest of your life like this, that there is a way out, you know. And I think even knowing that might help to give people the motivation that they need to take that leap of faith and say, right, well, I'm sick and tired of being a certain way and I really want to change my life. And that's actually a conclusion that a lot of people come to. You know, they say that most people change themselves for one of two reasons, either inspiration or desperation. A lot of people get to that point of desperation where they're sick and tired of being a certain way. They're sick and tired of feeling down, feeling anxious, feeling negative, you know, and they really want to do something about it, and they're just sick and tired of being a certain way. That's a powerful motivator to not want to feel a certain way anymore, you know. And then the other one is, of course, inspiration.
Which one do you think is stronger, more powerful?
Possibly.
I think desperation.
Desperation, possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say so as well.
Yeah, because we unconsciously move away from pain as human beings and move towards, you know, pleasure or things that are easier. We're just naturally hardwired that way. So if somebody's feeling pain, a lot of pain for a long period of time, they're going to want to escape.
Yeah,
you know,
100%. Yeah.
Unfortunately, some people escape the wrong way, and they escape through, you know, whether it's alcohol or drugs or self-harm. It's a way that some people escape, but that actually makes the issue worse. But there are positive ways that you can escape from being in a negative situation, you know.
Did you ever work with people that have been involved, for example, in alcohol abuse, drugs, or like self-harm and all that sort of stuff? Have you ever worked with people like that? Have you ever encountered?
I have unofficially.
Yeah.
Before I actually set up the coaching business, I have worked with people, not working with them directly, but just trying to, I guess, be there for certain people to try and advise them and try and, you know, give them the motivation that they need. And alhamdulillah, some of them did manage to turn their lives around. But that would have been prior to establishing and setting up the business, you know. But I guess from a business point of view, so far the main focus has been I'm working with a few athletes, some students as well. So I've got a few medical students that I'm working with from different countries, and a few other professionals, you know, like people that work in IT, architecture, all that kind of stuff. Because a lot of people out there, you know, want to get to the next level in their life, no matter what it is they do. And hiring a coach is a great way to do that, because a coach can give you a perspective that you can't see. As a coach, I can look at somebody and I can see something in them that they can't see themselves, you know, and I can, you know, help them to analyze where they are and help them to create a very clear, concise roadmap and a path to get from where they are to where they want to be. And that's the importance of hiring a coach, you know.
You know, you being a Muslim, is there anything in Islam that helped you in the way
Good question.
Yeah? In the way you decide to coach somebody? Is there something that motivates you through Islam, or any inspiration you get from Islam in your coaching, the way you coach?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, one of the fundamental principles of Islam that I've learned over the years is the principle of ihsan. And that as Muslims, we have a responsibility to be the best version of ourselves that we can possibly be. As in, we should really be striving for excellence in every aspect of our lives, whether that's in your marriage, whether that's in your job, your career, your business, physically, mentally, in your deen, in many, many different ways. We should be continuously striving to be the best version of ourselves, you know. So that's the main, I guess, principle that I think is in harmony with the work that I'm doing, which is helping people to achieve excellence in a variety of different aspects of their lives, you know. So
Akhi Khalil, as you know, a lot of the youth that you've encountered and we've encountered, because, you know, they're part of our community and we are a small community at the end of the day. They suffer from, you know, drug abuse, you know, and going out with the wrong people, you know, alcohol and all the stuff that the society bombards for them and kind of beautifies for them. You know, kind of way.
I think sorry, to cut you off. I think because like a lot of us Muslims come in now, we have like, I think we are struggling with an identity crisis. When we go out, do we use our Muslim identity? Do we use our Irish identity? Or for example, I'm from Nigeria, do I use my Nigerian identity? I think there's a crisis, and that's why people turn into alcohol, drugs. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there are many different factors that would cause somebody to, let's say, you know, pursue the path of drugs or alcohol. But one of the most powerful factors would definitely be environmental factors. You know, when you're young, when you're a teenager, one of the most important things for you at that age is to fit in, to feel like, well, I'm part of this group and my friends accept me and I'm not basically a reject, right? And that kind of ties in with one of our most basic needs as human beings. We have these social needs, right? That we need to feel a sense of belonging. We need to feel that we're part of a community, you know. And for many people, they fulfill that need by, you know, hanging around with their friends. And if all their friends are doing something, let's say it's drugs or alcohol, whatever it is, if all their friends are doing it, it's very difficult for them to not do it, because they need to do certain things to whatever their group of friends are doing. They kind of have to follow suit. You know, it's very difficult to be the friend from within a group of, let's say, whatever, 5-10 people, and 9 of them are drinking alcohol and you're not. That's going to be difficult, you know. And, you know, like you mentioned earlier on, even the Prophet ﷺ said that, you know, your deen is the deen of your friends, basically, you know. And there's actually a psychological reason for that as well. There's a part of our brains which is called mirror neurons, that we're actually meant to, or we actually unconsciously copy the behavior and the mannerisms of the people around us. And that's kind of one of the ways that we learn how to become a functioning member of a society, is we look at what everybody else is doing and we unconsciously mimic them and copy them, you know, which is a good thing, because we need to learn how to function in a society. But it's like a double-edged sword. If you're hanging around in a bad group and a bad environment, then that part of your mind is working against you. If that makes sense, you know.
So the first advice you'd give friends?
100%. Yeah. You are the sum of the 5 people that you spend most of your time with. You know.
That's a good echo sentence.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're hanging around with 5 drug dealers, you're going to be number 6. There's no doubt about it, you know. So
the sum of the 5 people.
But let's say for example, like, these are the friends I grew up with, and you know, we spend all of our times together, and I know what they're doing is bad, and I know, as you said earlier, desperation. I'm sick of what's happening. But every time I'm about to leave, you know yourself what it's like. Oh, you know, why are you leaving us? What are you doing? You know what I mean? Like that pressure. How, like, would you have any advice how you can, like, is there something you substitute?
Move to different country.
That's a good one. That is actually a valid one, to be honest. You know,
how would you move to a different country?
Something realistic for the youngers. You know what I mean? Is there something realistic for the youngers?
I don't know. Patience.
It's definitely a challenge, but I'd say I know, like, there can be an emotional attachment to our friends. Like, these are the people that we grew up with, and you know, like, it can happen to many people where they come to a difficult decision in their life where they feel, right, I'm gonna have to break away from a certain group of friends because I don't like what they're doing, or I don't believe in what they're doing, or this is not what I want for myself anymore. That can be a very difficult decision for anybody to make at any point in life, but particularly if you're a teenager, it's a very, very difficult decision to make, you know. So my advice to young people would be, you know, there are other friends out there that perhaps could be more supportive towards your journey to better yourself or to figure out what you want to do with your life. There are people out there that if you spend time with them, they will help to build you up as a human being rather than tearing you down by, you know, introducing negative things into your life, whether it's drugs or alcohol or self-destructive habits, you know. The thing about it's very difficult, it's very tricky with young people though, because generally speaking, young people, it's difficult to tell them what to do. Teenagers tend to be rebellious in their nature, you know, and I remember being a teenager and I was like that as well. You know, my parents couldn't tell me what to do. I had to figure it out for myself, you know. And that can happen to a lot of people, you know, but it's risky as well, because if you just say, right, I'm going to figure it all out for myself, some people can go down a negative path, and they may never ever come back. And that is a major risk that, you know, a lot of people take, and some people are lucky, they can do something and try and then realize, no, this is not what I thought it was, I understand it now, I'm going to walk away from it, you know. Some people, they get unfortunately a little bit too deep or too involved, and it becomes very, very difficult for them to walk away, you know.
Some of them walk out with a calamity as well. That's the only way they learn. Something bad happens to them, you know what I mean?
Unfortunately,
Realize, you know what I mean? But before you got to elite performance coaching, Khalil,
I was going to ask that question.
You've had a long journey, because I know you through my uncle, you know. And as we all know, we've been you've done a lot of work at Islamic Relief. You've done a lot of charity work.
Charity. I think from the roles you talked about, you're more like you like promote helping other people. Yeah, that's really good in terms of trying to impact people's life. Because when I was thinking about what career choice I want to have, I was thinking about what career can I make an impact to people. So your careers seem to do that a lot.
100%, yeah. Well, prior to setting up my business, I did work for Islamic Relief for about 6.5 years.
Were you in what position?
Fundraising. I was just focused on fundraising, you know. There was kind of a managerial aspect to it, like helping in other areas, but the main focus, 80-90% of it would have been fundraising, you know. So it was a very interesting journey. It lasted 6.5 years, and it definitely changed me in a big way for the better, you know. Alhamdulillah, I'm grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving me the opportunity to serve through that organization, you know. And maybe I'll kind of just tell you a little bit about how I got involved with the organization, how my path kind of led to that organization. Because I remember, I think it was probably around 2012, the Syrian civil conflict was, you know, very, very much heated at the time. And there was a lot of people that were fleeing the war. There was a lot of people, you know, millions of people were becoming refugees, both internally and, you know, in all the other surrounding countries. And I remember, you know, a lot of us were following what was happening there, and we felt very sad. And, you know, I remember following the war and seeing what was going on there. And I really felt a strong desire to do something about it, you know. It wasn't enough for me to see what was happening there and feel sad for a period of time or feel emotional about it and then not do anything. That just didn't sit well with me. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to do it. But I just knew deep down inside I have to do something.
Wanted to do something.
I don't know how. And maybe Allahu A'lam, only Allah knows, that perhaps that feeling or that intention is what led me to cross paths with Islamic Relief, you know. So I remember one time I was flying back home. I was on a flight and the air hostess made an announcement. We were coming back to Dublin, and it seemed at the time that everybody on the plane was Irish, you know. And I'd say it's very likely that I was possibly the only Muslim on that flight. But the air hostess made an announcement and she said, we're collecting on behalf of UNICEF for the children of Syria. And then she walked down the aisle with a bag. And I remember everybody on the plane started moving around and, you know, putting their hands in their pockets and opening their bags. And literally everybody on the plane put money in their bag. And that kind of shocked me because I wasn't expecting it. Because, you know, I was on so many flights before, and usually the air hostesses, like, they make an announcement, oh, we're selling scratch cards or we're doing this. And nobody's bothered, nobody cares. But when it came to helping the children of Syria, you could see that response, you know. And it really inspired me to see all of these people giving, you know. And, you know, like, fair play to everybody on that flight that did donate something.
Is this before you joined Islamic Relief?
Yeah. But it really got me thinking, you know, if look how generous these people are, and they're not Muslims, like they're non-Muslims, you know, but look how they're responding. Everybody gave generously on that flight. But that got me thinking, you know, what are we doing about it as the Muslim community? And it got me thinking, we have to do more. We have to do more. And that thinking repetitively is probably, or one of the things that led to me crossing paths with the organization. So a few months after that, I got a phone call. And I was informed Islamic Relief are here. Some of the management from the UK are here, and they're interested in setting up an operation here.
Before Islamic Relief was in an island?
They did some fundraising over the years, I believe, but they didn't have an official office
They weren't established
here yet.
I didn't know that.
So this was around, the beginning of my journey was 2013. So I was like, yeah, okay. I didn't really know much about Islamic Relief at the time, but I was open-minded to the idea, you know. But to be honest, there was a little bit of reluctance at the time because I was coming from two positions. There was this kind of like internal battle going on in my mind. Should I do it? Should I not do it? It's a good opportunity. However, there was a certain fear that, oh, what if I do this? And, oh, what are people going to say? Or what are people going to think? Or people are going to criticize me? Or people are going to do... And there was that voice in my head, which was the fear voice, trying to stop me from doing it, you know. But then there was another voice that was saying to me, well, what if this is an opportunity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you and you don't take it? And then maybe He'll ask me in the future and akhirah, maybe he'll ask me, well, I gave you a chance to do something and you didn't do it.
I gave you the means and you just neglected.
So you ignored this opportunity that crossed your path. And alhamdulillah, that's the voice that won the battle in the end. But I must admit, like, there was that initial struggle because I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And initially I thought it was going to be one of these kind of jobs where I'd be sitting in an office, like taking phone calls or something, but it was nothing like that at all. Like, but alhamdulillah, like, it was great. It was a great experience. And my journey kind of really started with me going to Syria to see the work that was being done. Within a matter of weeks of me joining the organization, I was brought to see what was happening near the border, the Turkish-Syrian border.
So show you where you went on the grounds in Syria.
Yeah.
Right. Aleppo would have been in it.
Aleppo, yeah. So we didn't really go too far in the border. It was only a few kilometers, and we went to visit a few of the refugee camps. And it was definitely a life-changing experience for me because it's one thing to see what was happening there on TV, but then when you're physically there, it's a different story altogether. When you can talk to the local people and see what they're going through, it definitely changed me in a big way as a person, and it opened up my eyes to so many things. So I remember there was one camp that we went to, and there was a lady there. She looked like she was in her 70s, an old lady, and she just had tears in her eyes. She was crying, So we walked over to her to see what was going on, and it turned out that she was waiting for the last 3 days to get a tent. And she didn't have a tent because they ran out of tents and all the tents were taken. And she was just sitting there crying because she had spent the past 3 days sleeping under a tree. Imagine a woman who looked like she was in her 70s. And she just came over to us with tears in her eyes telling us about her family and her house got destroyed in her, her town or wherever she lived. And she was there on her own and she was waiting for her tent. But they were still waiting and she was stuck sleeping under a tree for 3 days. And then there was another family that I met there. It was mother, father, and 6 children. And they were all very, very young children. They were all under the age of 10. I'd say the youngest was probably only a few months old. Less than a year, maybe 6 months, 8 months, something like that. And what happened is they arrived at the camp and the father was the camp leader. So they had a tent. But what he decided to do, because there was a shortage of tents, is he actually sacrificed his family tent and he gave it to another group of elderly people that were in the camp. So he gave away his family's tent.
So his family didn't sleep.
They had no tent. So basically their shelter was a sheet on the ground, right? And this camp was in a very kind of mountainous area. So there was a lot of rocks. So it wasn't like, a smooth surface or anything like that. Very, very kind of rocky and stuff. So it'd be very uncomfortable to sleep on that.
And in the time of the winter, especially in Aleppo, it'd be very cold.
Yeah.
Very, very cold. Actually would snow. Because I know northern Iraq would be the same.
Yeah.
Very, very cold.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so this particular family were sleeping on, they had a single mattress. So they basically had a sheet, which was just on top of the rocks. That was the only thing separating them from the rocks. And then they had a single mattress. That was the mother and the baby and maybe another 1 or 2 of the children were squeezed onto the mattress. And then the rest of the kids were just sitting on the rug. And then their shelter above their heads was a sheet, another plastic sheet. And one side of it was tied to a tree stump and the other side of it was tied to a broken down tractor. And I have pictures, I'll send them to you inshallah so you can see this family for yourself. And they were kind of the main things that really struck me in a big way. Like, look at what these people are going through, But that was an essential part of my motivation because I came back from that journey with a real, very, very strong, powerful desire to do something, And I remember coming back here with like a fire in my belly to do something. And I just, that's how really the journey began, And I just went out there and started to talk to as many people as possible about what was happening there and what Islamic Relief were doing to respond to the crisis, And essentially that was my main role for the organization, was to understand the work that they were doing and to inform people about what Islamic Relief were doing and to tell people how they could get involved and how they could contribute,
SubhanAllah, I know this may relate to this to an extent, but what I find crazy is that there's people in the world that would appreciate anything, but I've heard a lot of our people say, I can't wait to get out of this skip. And SubhanAllah, they spend their whole time, just let's say they're doing drugs or involved in bad habits, and they're living like bums. You know, it's a rough word to say, but it's the truth. They're living like bums and they're wasting their time. There's so much potential for them. There's so much opportunities for them, you know. And look on the other side, there are people they don't even have a tent. Like the other day, I seen a picture that went viral of a man that was willing to sell his kidney for a tent, like for his family in it. Akhi, like, can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Wallahi, we are blessed. We are living in, like, we are blessed in every single way, akhi. You know, you want anything for dinner, everything's there. Anything for lunch, anything's there. Anything you want, you know what I mean? Anything you desire, the latest phone, nice clothes, everything we have there, subhanallah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have people that, you know, they don't use any of that. You know what I mean?
It's very unfortunate. I agree with you 100%. My experiences really opened my eyes, and it made me realize that, you know, I don't really have much of a right to complain about my life, you know. And maybe before those experiences, I might complain about, you know, whatever it is, complaining about different things. But it really opened my eyes up to many things. And probably one of the, you know, the biggest things that it made me realize is how blessed and fortunate I am to live in a country where there's no war. There's no, there's nobody, you know, coming to bomb your house or kick the door down. And there's no threat over your life, you know. And as well as that, you have access to, you know, you can turn on the tap and there's clean water there. You have your 3 meals a day. All these basic things are what we take for granted, right? And it's just human nature, you know. They say familiarity breeds contempt, you know. The things that we become familiar with, we just take for granted. But if those things were to disappear, we'd understand the value of them, you know. Like, imagine there was no water, for example, for a week. How much would we appreciate water, you know? But it's because we have it and it's there all the time and we take it for granted, you know? And yeah, I mean, just these experiences really woke me up, and I realized that I was living in a comfortable bubble in the past, and I wasn't really living in the real world, you know? And unfortunately, there are, you know, if not millions, then billions of people that are living in poverty around the world, you know? People living on $2 a day or less. You know, and I guess one of the key things that, you know, just reflecting on these things over the years made me realize that not only do, you know, I have whatever the basic things that a lot of people don't have, and alhamdulillah, I'm grateful for that, but I have the opportunity to achieve my potential as a human being. But if I was born into a war zone, let's say I was born into wherever, you know, Yemen or Syria, this or that, and none of us decide where we're born. Any of us could have been born into a war environment, you know, and there's no food, there's no access to education, there's no access to clean drinking water. It's literally impossible for you to achieve your full potential as a human being, you know,
true.
and that's something we take for granted, you know. And there's a lot of people, like you're talking about people that complain, oh, I want to leave this kipper moaning or this or that or the other. You know, what I'd say to those kind of people is, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put greatness within you. He's given you phenomenal potential, and it's not to be wasted, you know. And instead of focusing on what you don't have, and instead of focusing on all the negative things, because what you focus on actually expands in your reality. So if you focus on everything that's not working, everything that's going wrong in your life, you're going to see more of that in your world. But if you shift your perspective and start saying, alhamdulillah, I have a roof over my head, there's no war here, I can open the tap, and these are all very basic things, you know. But if you begin to express gratitude for what you already have, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to open more doors for you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran does say, if you are grateful towards me, I shall certainly increase you. وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ, right? That's what he says. So surely, I mean, that is one of the paths to success, is even if you don't have as much as you like right now, stop focusing on the lack of what you don't have and start focusing on what you actually do have. And that will open the doors for what you want to begin to come into your life. But if you keep focusing on the lack and you keep moaning and complaining about what's not there, you're going to drive away what could be coming in your direction, you know?
There's actually a beautiful hadith that relates to this. Prophet Muhammad says, when it comes to the dunya, always look to those that are below you, that have less than you, so that you appreciate what you have, you know, and you start working with what you have as well. And when it comes to the deen, always look at those that are above you, so that you start working to catching up to them, and, you know, even preceding them. You know what I mean? And touching on the point you mentioned, like if you were born in a war zone, like you'd be so busy with just getting the necessities for you to survive. Your potential has gone out the window. Actually, I was born in Iraq and I lived 2 years during the war in Iraq, and it was terrible. And now I still have relatives that live in Iraq, and sometimes I do get in touch with them from time to time, and they are telling me that there are people there that finish their degrees, they study the masters, they study their PhDs. After they finish college, there's no employment. They end up selling fruits and vegetables on the street in a stall. You know what I mean? And they have, let's say, a PhD in engineering. You know what I mean? They have they're doctors, like qualified doctors. But nothing, no jobs.
Some people think that most of the refugees that come like to Europe, they're all like they don't have any education.
Uneducated.
But all of them are doctors, engineers, philosophers.
Absolutely.
And those people, like not all of them, of course we can't generalize, but like from what I've seen, from my experience, these people realize what the opportunity they have and they use it. SubhanAllah, they use it. They're like, I'm not going to waste that opportunity. Like for example, I always hear from my dad, he always says, are you dumb? You know, like you came from a war zone and now you have so much opportunity and you're wasting your time. You know what I mean? You're wasting your time on drugs, you're wasting your time on temporary pleasures, and then it comes at the end of the week, you have no money in your pocket. Are you for real? You know what I mean? It's like for example, because a lot of people complain, they go out there, they hand out their CVs, they can't get a job. It's like you can go and, like if worst comes to worst, you can go and get a government funded course that will pay you for studying. Like imagine people that live in tent, they have such an opportunity. You get paid to study, and after you finish your degree or whatever, then you get a job that will pay you. That's crazy, man. And there are people that neglect that, you know what I mean, and they don't use that for their benefit, and subhanallah.
That's like a dream for people all over the world, you know, to have the opportunities that we have here. But like I mentioned earlier, it's human nature to take for granted what you have, you know, and that's why it's so important for people to be aware and to see what's happening, whether it's Yemen, whether it's Syria. There's so many different crises all around the world. But, you know, if people were to see what was happening there, then that's a reminder for them that you have a lot to be grateful for, you know. And, you know, one of the conclusions that I came to over the years from, you know, all the experiences that I went through is that for somebody in Syria, for somebody in Yemen, for somebody stuck in a war zone that can't get out, that's their test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those people need to be patient. What they need is sabr, by the bucket load, of course. But their test is to be patient during hardship. Our test is different, right? Now, because there's an absence of hardship here relative to what other people are going through, people don't think that there's any test. This test that we are confronted with is a lot more subtle, right? The test that we are being confronted with is, you have everything. What are you doing about it? You know? Are you grateful? You have everything. We live in the most affluent society that has ever existed throughout human history.
That's so true.
There's never been a better time to do something with your life, literally, ever. You know, now, like what you guys are doing, mashallah, and fair play to you, you can invest a little bit of money and get, you know, some equipment and share a story or a message, and you can reach millions of people around the world. You know, that's something that probably even kings and queens of the past couldn't even dream of doing. And we all have this opportunity right now. This right here, a smartphone, all right, is more powerful. The computer, or the computing power of this phone, is more powerful than the computing power of the space shuttle that, you know, went to the moon. You know, this gives you access to information that even former presidents of countries didn't have. But what are people using it for? The vast majority of people are using it to waste their time, sadly. You know, and another issue that I believe confronts us in a big way is that a lot of people may not see a problem or an issue because everybody else around them is doing it, right? So if everybody around you is just spending a couple of hours a day just unconsciously doing this for 3-4 hours a day, not realizing that they're wasting their time, if everybody around you is doing that, then you might not see an issue with that because everybody else is doing it. Do you get me? So maybe if you don't do it, you might be categorized as a weirdo. There might be something wrong with you. Well, I don't. Or some people might choose not to have social media accounts. Maybe people might think, well, that's weird. What do you mean you don't have Instagram? Do you get me? Like, so it's a great. I believe this is one of the greatest challenges of our time. Even just something as simple as focus, being able to consciously focus on one thing at a time. and to eliminate distractions, I believe is a skill set in itself, being able to eliminate distractions, you know. You know, on some of my coaching calls, I have these discussions, you know, with the members, and I think one of the major challenges that they're confronted with is procrastination and distractions. So some of them might be, let's say, studying medicine, for example, and they're studying 5-6 hours a day, but the smartphone is there beside them, and they're getting notifications and messages, and there's several apps that are giving them notifications, and it's distracting them from their work. So I made a suggestion to them, and I said, how about just trying this out? Take your smartphone and put it in another room when it's study time. When it's study time, it's study time. That's it. It's time to wipe out all other distractions, and you're going to get a lot more in-depth, focused work done. Just put your smartphone somewhere else. I said, and I bet you what's going to happen is your arm is going to be reaching for the smartphone even though it's not there. There's no smartphone there, but your arm is still going to be doing this. Why? Because it's an unconscious habit pattern. People are looking at their phone 100 plus times per day. Why? Because we're programmed to do this now. We've programmed ourselves to just keep doing this. Why are we doing it? We don't know. Because we're unconsciously programmed that way.
Like, it's so true. Sometimes I go on Instagram like, why the hell am I on Instagram?
Sometimes you're bored. I just flick through social media. Just flicking. I'm still bored. You're just still flicking.
Or sometimes you want to do something, you want to call someone, you get distracted, you know what I mean? And then you're doing like 10 different things and you completely forgot about what you wanted to do.
Sometimes my parents tell me, Fuad, go do this. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But now there's like, Fuad, have you done that? I said, oh yeah.
SubhanAllah.
I think just on the whole topic of social media, I just wanted to add something. I think it's very, very important that people understand that the people who created these social media platforms, right, understood that these social media platforms are going to have negative consequences for people. Psychologically, it's going to have some type of negative impact or implication. And people have to understand that these apps are designed to absorb as much of your time and attention as possible. They want to leech your attention and time away from you, which are some of the most valuable things that we have. And that's why there are advertisers that are willing to spend millions to get our attention and to get our time. These are things that we need to value. Our time. Our time is more valuable than money. A lot of people are chasing money, but you could lose €1,000 tomorrow, for example, and the next week you get it back.
There's actually,
if you lose 1,000 hours of your time, you're not going to get it back.
100%.
You know?
What's behind you is khalas, is gone.
Yeah.
there's actually a hadith in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, نعمتان مغبون فيهما كثير من الناس الصحة والفراغ. There are two blessings which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives people that many of us waste, and that's health and free time. So you can tell, like, a lot of people, they don't use their free time productively.
And then they live with regrets at a later stage, because old age will eventually set in. And what happens when old age sets in? We're going to reflect and we're going to look back at our young years. Oh, I wish I did more. I wish I didn't fear so much. I wish I took more risks. We were having a conversation earlier on, and we were talking about the fact that a lot of people just want to play it safe. They're afraid to take risks. But I've learned that the greatest risk you can take in your life is taking no risks. That's the actual biggest risk you can take in your entire life.
I have so many clips in mind for this to go this episode.
You know? And another thing is fear of failure. You know, like this stuff that I teach people when I'm working with them is a lot of people are so afraid of failing because they're afraid of what other people will think of them if they fail or if they make a mistake or whatever it is. But if you go and look at any field or industry and find out who are the top people in those fields, right? Who are the movers and shakers and people who are really driving society forward, the most successful people on the planet, you'll also find that they failed more times than anyone else. But they persisted. The biggest problem, or one of the biggest problems that people face nowadays, is they think, well, I'm going to try open this business, or I'm going to try and do this job, or I'm going to try and pursue this career. And they try it for a while. And as soon as they're confronted with difficulties and obstacles, they quit and they shift their attention to something else. And then the same process happens again. They try for a while, and then it gets difficult, and then they quit and they move to something else. And they spend their entire life just trying things, and they don't master anything.
Don't achieve anything, yeah.
Because we, to a certain degree, have been conditioned to believe that pain and failure and all of these things are things to be avoided. And sometimes you actually need to be counterintuitive and understand that pain and failure and temporary defeat are things that we should be embracing and moving towards. rather than running away from, you know. And all top people, all top performers understand that. There is no way that you can grow and develop your potential as a human being if you are not regularly being confronted with failure, pain, temporary defeat, temporary setbacks, maybe even criticism from people, you know. But you'll find that the people that criticize you, they're never doing better than you. The people that have enough time on their hands to sit back and point out all of your flaws have too much time on their hands, you know. Actually, it's funny. My father, I mentioned earlier, comes from Tunisia, and they actually have a job description for people that sit all day long. And I've seen these people because I went there sometimes during the summer, and I made friends there. And I saw people that would literally sit on a corner somewhere where they have good visibility, and they'd watch everybody walking by. And they have a name for everyone. Look at him, look at her, she's this, he's that, he's fat, she's skinny, he's blah, 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 whatever. And they sit there the whole day just making fun of other people and criticizing other people. And those people in Tunisian society or culture have been given a job description which is called Shadd al-Hayt, which basically means their job is to make sure that the wall remains upright, that it doesn't fall down. Literally, that's their job description. And to be honest with you, I feel sorry for those people because they're wasting their time. Those people could be doing something with their lives. Those people could be developing new skills or mastering new skills, learning something new, helping other people, volunteering for charities, making a positive difference in the world. There's so many different things that they could be doing, but they choose to just sit there and criticize other people all day long, you know?
So,
it's
you know,
unfortunate,
until you said you worked with Islamic Relief, a lot of people like nowadays are very, how do I put this? They don't want to give their money away to charities nowadays. They feel like, oh, they probably just keep the money to themselves, or they don't have enough knowledge of what the charity actually does. So how does, for example, if I, for example, the Yemeni crisis going on today. Yeah. If I give 10 euros to Islamic Relief, yeah. How is the money spent? Like, how's the things distributed?
So from my experience, I've been confronted with this question many times by people, and it's an important question to ask. And part of my role when I was working for the organization is to educate people about the work. There are a lot of misconceptions about how charities work, right? And I kind of noticed that there's a lot of people that think that charity work is just something you can do off the top of your head. You know, you can just put a few food parcels in a van and drive into refugee camps and throw the boxes and drive off, right? And perhaps to a certain extent, that was my understanding of charity work before I joined Islamic Relief, but it's totally wrong, you know? Organizations like Islamic Relief have 35 years plus experience working with people, and they really, really know what they're doing, you know? So I believe it's best for us to trust the experts in their field and let them do their work and support them. If we know that, for example, Islamic Relief is a leading humanitarian organization, then we should all support them because they know what they're doing, and they have years and years and years and a track record of delivering world-class projects. But unfortunately, some people would rather try to do it themselves. But it's not really an efficient way of doing things, you know? So for example, you know, if you have a problem with your teeth, you're not going to go to the local plumber and say, here, I have a pain in this tooth, can you fix it for me, right? You're going to go to a dentist, someone who knows what they're doing, someone who knows what they're talking about. The same thing should apply to charities as well. There's people and there's organizations who have a proven record, who know what they're doing, who can access people that probably nobody else can get to, you know? Like, for example, in Yemen, Islamic Relief has more reach than any other humanitarian organization in the world. There's many organizations that want to intervene and want to help the Yemeni people, but they can't, you know? So a lot of them are funding their projects through Islamic Relief. So for example, during the last year that I was working for the organization, I heard that Trokra wanted to raise 300,000 euro for Yemen, but it was to be implemented and delivered through Islamic Relief because they have the reach, they have the infrastructure, and they have the local knowledge and the resources. And that's actually another great thing that I learned about the organization over the years, is that any country that I went to, all of the staff on the ground were local people. So if you were to go to Yemen, you'd find that all the staff are Yemeni people. If you went to Syria, you'd find that the staff are Syrians. If you went to Mali, which is another country I went to, all the local staff were from Mali. They weren't from somewhere else, you know. And I think that's a very important thing to consider when it comes to delivering charity work, is there needs to be a certain level of trust and relatability between the beneficiaries or the people that the organization is aiming to serve and the staff, you know. Like, for example, if I went to Mali and I know nothing about the country or the culture or the language, that's going to create barriers between me and the local people, and perhaps I wouldn't be able to accomplish anything because of that. So that's another thing that I noticed about the organization, which I found, you know, to be great. So, you know, what I'd say to people is it's important to ask questions. It's your money and you have the right to ask any question that you like, you know, and based on the answers, you can make an educated decision. Across the board, when it comes to, I know you asked a little bit about how the money is spent. There is an administrative fee, which applies across all the donations, which is 10%. On average, and that money is spent on running costs like rent for the office or salaries for the staff or phone bills or whatever. These are basic administrative costs, you know. But there's some people that think, or some people have this mentality that charities shouldn't take anything. But if that was the case, charities would cease to exist and the beneficiaries wouldn't get served, because nobody can live on fresh air, and nobody can rent an office without paying for it. Nobody can get a phone and not have, you know, to be able to buy credit or pay the bill or whatever. You know, this is the world that we live in, you know. Like, idealistically speaking, of course, yeah, all of that money should go to the poor and needy. But everything incurs a cost, you know. If I'm to move this item from point A to point B, somebody's going to charge me for that, you know. That's just the way the world works, you know. But generally speaking, I've found people understand that, you know, in order to run an operation, of course there's going to be costs, and they're happy enough because they understand that, you know, even from an Islamic point of view, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, that the people that collect on behalf of the poor and needy are entitled to a percentage of it. So even from an Islamic point of view, that's totally acceptable, it's totally normal, totally fine, you know.
You know, there's the Eid is coming up now, Eid, and I seen that Islamic Relief have this Kobani campaign in which, like, they distribute meat to different people. You worked in Islamic Relief. Do you know how that works?
Yeah, so the Qurbani campaign is, or would be the biggest campaign other than Ramadan. Okay. And on average, over the past few years, Islamic Relief has distributed fresh meat on Eid to around 3 million people, right? In around 30 countries, 29, 30 countries. And the thing about these people is they will be really, really poor. These are people that are living in extreme poverty, right? Many of them would be living below the poverty line, which is $2 a day, is what the average earnings for someone
$2 a day?
A day, yeah. Which means if you're earning $2 a day, it's going to be impossible for you to buy meat for your family. So these people don't eat meat because it's seen as a luxury to them. They don't have the money to be able to buy it, right? So on Eid, if they're given, you know, a few kilos of meat, or I'm not sure the exact amount, but it's one portion is one sheep, or in terms of cow, I think a cow is 7 shares. But if somebody is given meat during the 3 days of Eid, it really, really gives them something to celebrate with their families. And one of the great things that I, you know, kind of liked about this particular campaign is after every distribution on Eid, all of the field offices would send photographs of their distribution, and you'd see people, you know, forming a queue and collecting their meat and going home, right? And just seeing the reactions on people's faces was something really, I found really amazing. Like, you could really see the joy in people's faces when they brought their meat home to have with their family and their kids, and it makes them feel Eid. The Eid is something to be celebrated, you know, so it's a great thing. And of course there's the Islamic obligation of it, you know, but, you know, we're very fortunate to live in a part of the world where you know, we eat meat maybe every day, some of us. Maybe some people more than once a day. But we're eating meat at least 3-4 times a week on average. So it's not really anything special or out of the norm for us, you know. And I think that's why it's a great service to have that option to say, right, well, instead of me sacrificing a lamb and eating it myself and trying to find poor people to give a third of my meat to, that I can give the entire amount to people who are less fortunate than myself. And sometimes it's not very expensive to do that. In some of the recent campaigns, it was around 50 to 60 euro for for the cheapest option, which is what they call Group A. So for what you're giving, it's a very, very small amount of money, you know, to give to sacrifice an entire sheep and then to distribute it amongst people that in the absence of that donation wouldn't be able to afford.
That's
meat, you know, so.
Just to come back on your coaching aspect. I remember you said something. I just want to ask the question before I forget. In which, like, you want people are wasting the times and they should work on a skill. So that led me to think about nowadays. People think, college, you have to go to college then get a job. But I noticed when I do my own research, the people who actually do well are people who have skills. Like loads of college coaches, they don't teach us to have a skill. They teach you to work for a job and you do the job. But when you're doing a job, what if no employment exists? What skills do you have to sell yourself or be employed? So do you think like it's more important to have a skill set that you can sell? Or just go to college and...
I would be a firm believer in the latter and having a valuable skill set to sell to the marketplace. As far as I'm concerned, that's the way to go. Look, everybody's different. Some people have different approaches to different things, but I'm a firm believer that this mentality of go to school, go to college, and then get a 9-to-5 job and do that job for 40 years and then retire and get the gold watch. That's a very, very outdated way of thinking. It just doesn't work in the real world anymore. Perhaps in our parents' time, that would have been the way to do things, but we don't live in that era anymore, and I don't think that way of thinking is really serving people, to be honest with you, so that's why, as I mentioned earlier on, people might think, being self-employed is risky, or opening a business is risky, or this or that or the other, but like I said, taking no risks is the greatest risk that you can take. I mean, there's demand for a lot of skill sets out there, so if you can get really, really good at something, people will be willing to pay you good money for whatever that skill set is. And part of what I share or teach the members of my coaching groups and stuff like that I work with is to master. One of the things that I teach them is mastery of your craft, so there's these daily habits that I teach people, and habit number 3 is master your craft, and one of my mentors taught me that if you study your chosen field and spend an hour a day studying it, whether that's reading books about it, listening to audiobooks about it, whatever it is, if you spend 60 minutes a day mastering your craft, within 5 years you're going to become an expert in your field. Okay, within 7 years you'll become an international authority in your field, and when you put yourself in that position, then you're going to, of course, earn all of the corresponding whether it's the high fees or getting paid well for whatever it is you do, you're going to earn a lot, and of course you'll get the respect and whatever else it is that you're looking for, whatever it is that motivates you, but you need to become valuable to the marketplace in order to earn those things,
I think the problem with young people, especially for me, say if you want to start something, you want results quickly. So for you want to start learning a language, you want to see results like 2 months, I should be fluent. People don't want to wait. We have this urge, we want now. If you're going into, people want to make money easily, quick money, and the reality, it's a process.
It doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
People they don't want to wait. Is that in nature?
It's a big mistake I've made over the years. Yes.
Okay.
Many times. It ties into one of the aspects of human nature, which is impatience. We are all impatient to varying extents, and particularly that we live in the era of instant gratification. We want everything to happen now. We want to click that button on Amazon and the next day the package arrives. So people want to apply that mentality to the marketplace, but that's just setting yourself up for failure and disappointment. And I know that based on my own experience, and as well as many other people have tried that, and it just doesn't work, and it's important to understand that anything worthwhile takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and if you really want to achieve success in your field or industry, it's important to understand that there's a process behind doing that. If you understand what the process is and you're willing to go through that process, you can achieve the desired result. So what I say to people that I'm working with is it's important to have crystal clear or a crystal clear vision on who you want to become and what you want to do with your life. Clarity is power. So understanding exactly what you want to do puts you in a position of strength, right? Then the second step is identify somebody who's already where you want to be, right? There is already people out there who have achieved what you want to achieve. So find out who those people are and find out what have they done, what books have they read, what courses have they studied, and then begin to do the same things that they have done over and over again until eventually you'll produce the same results that they do, you know. Everything in this world is governed by law, okay? There's no such thing as random occurrences or coincidences in this world. Everything is governed by law. And one of the, you know, most well-known laws of this world or of the entire universe is the law of cause and effect. It has many, many different names. It's called sowing and reaping. It's called action, reaction. You know, there's so many different names for it. But basically to apply that to what we're talking about is in order for you to produce a certain result, you're going to have to do certain things, as in you're going to have to make certain sacrifices, you're going to have to put in a certain amount of hours of work to get the effect, the desired effect. Every desired effect can be traced back to a cause. Once you understand and you determine what are the effects you desire in your life, you can trace them back to what are the causes that produce those effects, and then begin initiating those particular causes over and over, and ultimately and inevitably you will produce the desired effects or results, you know. And just one of the, I guess, examples that I give people, or just to really illustrate that this world is governed by law, it's not governed by, you know, random occurrences, is if I do this, for example, if I take my watch and I do this, right, that's called the law of gravity. There'll never be a day when I do this and my watch will fly in the other direction and hit the ceiling. It's just not going to happen, because we live in a world governed by law, and that's a clear law that we can see in front of our eyes called gravity, you know. But cause and effect can be seen, for example, in farming, right, is a good example. That imagine you're a farmer and you have these fertile lands and you can plant anything that you want in it, and the land will return whatever you plant, you know. And that's the way the mind works as well, you know. So it's important to keep feeding your mind with ideas and information and knowledge that is consistent with the person you want to become, you know.
You know, say if you want to, for people trying to learn something or trying to achieve something, can you give them like 3 tips they should follow?
Yeah. I'll share 3 of the daily habits of elite performance that I share with people on my coaching calls. So habit number 1 is what I call leverage your golden hour. What is your golden hour? Your golden hour is the 60 minutes first thing in the morning, the first hour of the day. It's also known as the rudder of the day, okay? So when you go to sleep, when you wake up in the morning, your brain is in a state called alpha, which means your conscious mind has slowed down. It's not fully active. Right now we're in a brainwave called beta. We're in a state of full alertness, and the conscious mind is most active in this brainwave state. But if you're in alpha, your conscious mind has slowed down, right? Which means that you can bypass the conscious mind and begin to plant ideas into your subconscious mind. Ideas, whatever ideas, whether it's to increase your self-confidence, to feel better about yourself, whatever it is that you're looking for. So I would suggest that people listen to something first thing in the morning that is consistent with the person they want to become. So listen to, for example, if you have a mentor, listen to audiobooks, positive audiobooks, listen to motivational talks, things that are going to strengthen your sense of self-belief. And that's going to set you up for the whole day. Because if you can master that hour in the morning and you can get yourself to a place where you feel good about yourself, the rest of the day will fall into place very nicely. So that would be the first habit that I teach people. And this can help to override negative programming that a lot of people have in their subconscious mind. So for example, if someone feels, well, I'm not good enough to do this, then what they need to do is spend an hour every single morning listening to, for example, confidence affirmations or something like that on YouTube. It's the stuff that goes straight into the subconscious mind, which will help to eliminate all these negative beliefs that people have about themselves in their subconscious minds, right? So that'll be the first habit that I teach. The second one is daily exercise, and there's many different reasons.
Exercise.
Yes. People might think that there's only physical benefits to exercise, as in, you know, you'll strengthen your muscles and you'll get fitter and all that kind of stuff, but there are also many psychological as well as emotional benefits to daily exercise. So even if you were to allocate, let's say 15-20 minutes a day to just elevate your heart rate, it could be something as simple as doing jumping jacks or running up and down the stairs or whatever it is, right? What happens is, not only are you strengthening your muscles, but when you exercise and you elevate your heart rate and you sweat, you release toxins from your body, and your brain also begins to produce many different chemicals which make you feel happy. So your brain releases dopamine and serotonin, which are known as happy chemicals, right? And your brain also secretes a chemical called BDNF, which is known as brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And what BDNF does is it heals damaged brain cells, and it helps you to generate new brain cells.
So
right?
exercising.
Yes. So there's a wide range of psychological benefits as well as physical benefits, you know? And I think one of the most important laws of life is that as human beings, we're either creating or we're disintegrating. One of the other. We're either growing or we're dying. Okay? This applies to, you know, you've heard the common expression. A lot of people say it all the time, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So let's say, for example, you started working out on one of your biceps. Let's say you started working out your left bicep and you left the right one, and you work this out for 30 days, and then you go have a look in the mirror after 30 days. This one is shrinking every day and this one is growing every day. So you're going to look very strange, basically, by the end of that month, because this one is going to keep growing and this one is going to keep dying, you know? And I read something very interesting a couple of weeks ago that basically, on average, by the age of 40, if you're not doing resistance training, you're losing on average 3% of your muscle mass every year.
What's resistance training?
Like weights and stuff like that. If you're not working out, by the time you hit 40 years old, you're losing 3% a year of your muscle mass. So between the age of 40 and 50, you're going to lose 30% of your muscle mass if you're not training and you're not working out, you know? So that'll be the second habit that I advise people to do. And even people who are not really into training and exercise and stuff, even if you just do something very, very simple, the important thing here is to elevate the heart rate. You'll feel great about yourself when you make this a daily habit and you own it, you know. And the third thing that I'd recommend people is master your craft, right? Identify what is the path you want to take, what is the area of the area that you want to become an expert in, and then begin to focus on that area. So an interesting example or an analogy that I've shared with some of the people that I've worked with when it comes to mastering your craft is Elon Musk, right? So his background is, you know, finance, and he was working for PayPal, and he sold all of his shares in PayPal, and then he was setting up SpaceX after that, right? And he put all of his half of his money into Tesla and the other half into SpaceX. But at the time, he knew nothing about space travel, right? He was clueless about space travel. So what did he do? He found out what are the top 30 books on space travel, and he ordered them all, and he read them all, and then he launched SpaceX. Right? So you can see how he mastered his craft over a period of time. Now anybody can do that, you know, but the biggest problem that people have is they don't know. They don't have that clarity, and that's part of my work, is helping people to generate clarity, helping people to generate their own answers and their own solutions. It's not my job or position to tell you what you should do. It's my job or position to help you increase your own self-awareness, to help guide you towards making positive decisions for yourself. So mastering your craft is a very powerful tool, because if you think about it, if you apply yourself for an hour a day, you're going to be an expert in your field within 5 to 7 years. Some people may say, well, that's a long period of time. I don't have 5 or 7 years to give to mastering my craft. And the answer to that would be very simple. Well, in 5 to 7 years, you're going to be 5 to 7 years older. Whether you like it or not, that time is going to go by. But will you master your craft in the process during that period of time or not? You know, or will you still be moaning and complaining in 5 to 7 years? The choice is yours. You know, we're the sum total of all of our decisions. A lot of people want to blame, and this is a this is a major, major game changer. This will shift your mentality altogether. And it shifted mine away from blaming everybody in your environment to accepting full 100% responsibility. I am responsible for my own life. It's not the economy. It's not the government. It's not other people. It's not my parents. It's not school. It's me. I'm responsible. And the difference between blaming, assigning blame to everything and not taking any blame for yourself is like imagine you were in a car and the car is going downhill and you're in the passenger seat and the car is just ready to drive off a cliff. You know, that's assigning. When you give, when you blame everything but yourself, you're actually assigning away your personal power and you're giving people power over you. And what you're saying is, in order for me to improve my life, I have to wait for somebody else to change. I have to wait for the government to change. I have to wait for the economy to change. You're giving away your personal power. But when you say to yourself, whatever happened to me happened, it doesn't matter what happened. The important thing is where you're going. Everybody's been through difficult times and traumas, and everybody's had hurtful experiences, right? That, there's no exceptions to that. Everybody has endured some type of pain or struggle. But a lot of people spend too much time just dwelling on that. Every day they wake up, they're just replaying these memories over and over again. And as a result, they keep producing the same experience, Instead of dwelling on a powerful vision of who do I want to become, they get held back by what happened to me in the past. And this is a trap that a lot of people fall into. So that's why it's so important to have clarity about who will I be in 5 years. Probably 95% of people out there, if you go up and ask them, who are you going to be in 5 years? They look at you like you have 10 heads, But if you don't have a clear, concise vision of who am I going to be in 5 years, it's very easy to be held back by the past or to be pulled from side to side by distractions, right? Social media, drugs, alcohol. There's so many different distractions out there that will pull you from side to side. Or the past will keep pulling you back. That's why you really need to know where you're going. And as well as that, when you know where you're going, to have that self-belief. I can do it. If other people can do it, I can do it too. Right? Nobody out there is better than you. Nobody's smarter than you. Everybody, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has put phenomenal potential inside each and every single one of us. And I think as Muslims, we're very blessed to have that sense of tawakkul, that sense of faith, And I was talking to a group of young lads a few weeks ago and I said, when a bird leaves the nest in the morning, the bird doesn't think, well, what if I don't catch a worm? I better stay in the nest all day just in case I fail. No, the bird doesn't think like that. The bird has no choice but to tawakkul, faith. I know if I go out and I seek, I'm going to come home with a full stomach. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ar-razaq, the sustainer or the provider. So if we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the sustainer and the provider, then that sense of tawakkul should override our fear. Not the other way around. It's not fear that should control us. It's having that sense of faith. If I go out there and I really, give it everything that I've got, I'm going to produce the result, But unfortunately, so many people are trapped by fear. And fear is killing their potential. I
was speaking to my uncle before. We had a very interesting conversation. And he mentioned yourself. And he said, Khalil was telling me that there are people that pay so much money. Because you mentioned affirmations. He told me that you told him that there are people that pay so much money to sit in a room with a coach, and then they close their eyes and they say money, 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 money. So the question is, what do you believe in the law of attraction? Let's start with that, because we were talking about the law of attraction.
Okay. Well, just to say something, if you start doing something like that woman did, and then you spend the rest of the day sitting at home on the couch, that money's not coming to you.
No, of course not.
Do you get me? What woman?
Sorry?
What did you say? Oh, your example.
He's asking you about the story of that woman.
So you said that my uncle was telling me that people would pay a lot of money. You know what I mean? The Khalil told him that people pay a lot of money to be coached by a person who they sit down and then they just close their eyes and they say money, 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 money. Kind of way. It's kind of like coaching in order for them to become successful. You understand what I'm trying to say? Yeah. So the question is the law of attraction, and as you mentioned, if you sit there and you do that all day, nothing's gonna happen. Yeah.
What I do believe in is something that we touched upon earlier on. It's called the law of cause and effect.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
As you sow, you're going to reap.
Yeah, 100%.
But if you fail to sow, then you fail to reap.
Yeah.
So it's not enough to just talk. That's leading to a position of delusion.
Right.
If you're just saying whatever it is, whether it's money or whatever it is, and then you're not going out and working hard. But if you have a sense of what you want and you have that vision or that direction, and then you go out and you have tawakkul, and you're willing to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty, and you're willing to make mistakes, and you're willing to endure whatever you go through, inshallah you're going to get the result at the end, But it's important to get yourself to a place where that sense of tawakkul and that faith overrides fear, not the other way around. That's an essential part of the journey. And that's why it's so important for people to understand that there's so many factors that govern people's lives, and it's happening at an unconscious level and they're not even aware of it. Like fear of failure or feeling that I'm not good enough to do something. It's really, really important that people understand these things, because if you can overcome yourself, then it's you have an open road to choose which way am I going. And that kind of reminds me of a famous African proverb that says, if there is no enemy within, then the enemy outside can do me no harm. Right? One of the biggest problems people have is themselves. People get in their own ways, And every day when you look at yourself in the mirror, you see two people at the same time. You see your best friend or your best ally, but you also, in many cases, can be looking at your worst enemy. So that's something interesting learned over the years. So we need to try and become more friends to ourselves rather than being enemies and causing our own pain and difficulties and stuff like that.
I have a thing to ask you. I feel like I'm getting coaching advice right now.
Yeah, that's literally it.
So I'm saying so much. I overheard you're talking about reading. Elon Musk read loads of books, and you've read some books. I think like nowadays people don't read. Can you tell us, like, do you think it's important to read? And also I was thinking about how does sleep, the way we sleep and the way we organize our sleep, how does that factor in how we are productive?
Okay. So in terms of sleep, I think one common issue or difficulty that people have is perhaps not getting enough high quality sleep. And I think one of the major contributing factors to that is looking at your smartphone or your screen right before you go to bed. Okay. So when you're looking at your screen, so let's say it's coming up to your bedtime, it's 11 o'clock, whatever it is, your normal bedtime. At that time, your brain naturally begins to produce melatonin, which is a chemical that helps you to get deep, restful sleep. But if you're looking at your phone, that actually blocks your melatonin production in your brain. So you don't get the restful sleep that your body needs. And as a result of that, that can affect your performance the next day. You won't feel as energetic. You won't feel as motivated to get things done, because getting high quality sleep is definitely an essential part of the process, And especially when I'm working with athletes and stuff like that are, doing a lot of very, very physically demanding activities, like getting sleep right is absolutely essential.
And is there like certain times that are like good to sleep at? I think.
Ideally speaking, it's good to go to bed like around Isha time and then wake up for Fajr. Ideally speaking, let's say between 10 p.m., 11 p.m. and then get up at 5, 6 in the morning. Ideally speaking, that's probably the best time to go to bed and wake up,
Islamically, thinking about it from an Islamic perspective, there's actually certain names for sleep patterns. For example, if you sleep after Fajr, if you're used to, for example, staying awake all night, sleeping after you pray Fajr, you sleep after Fajr. In Islam, they call it haylula. Haylula means something that gets between you and your rizq. Something that gets in the way of you and your rizq, you know what I mean? And then sleeping after the whole time, they call it qaylula, to rest, you know what I mean? And then sleeping after Asr, they call it haylula. It's like it causes, disease. Do you ever see when you wake up like after Asr time, near Maghrib time, you wake up, you're so confused.
You feel dizzy.
You feel so dizzy, you feel so confused. SubhanAllah, like there's Islamic name for these, periods of time of sleeping, just to show you how important sleep is for you and sleeping at the right time.
Yeah.
SubhanAllah, because a lot of the stuff that you're mentioning, like every time like when you're speaking, always a hadith pops up in my head. That relates to the stuff that you're teaching. SubhanAllah, it's like Prophet Muhammad is, our coach as well, personal coach.
Yeah,
SubhanAllah. SubhanAllah.
There's wisdom in everything he did.
Yes.
If you look at any area of his life, you'll see there's a reason why he did that. He didn't do anything without, meaning or a purpose behind it. Everything had meaning and purpose that he did, even sleeping.
Yeah.
So, what was the second question you asked me? So you asked me about sleeping and you asked me about something else?
Reading.
Oh, the importance of reading.
People don't read.
Yeah, for a period of time I didn't read. Probably, teenage years, early 20s, but probably around my mid-20s I decided, I don't even know why I started, but I just started picking up books, and alhamdulillah I did. Books have had definitely a profound impact on my life, and I definitely strongly advise people to read, because your brain really needs to be worked or stimulated on a regular basis to keep growing. Remember I spoke about one of the laws of life earlier, that if you're not growing, you're dying. If you're not creating, you're disintegrating. That applies to your mental faculties as well. If you're not exercising and using your brain on a daily basis, it's going to decline bit by bit over time.
So if you watch those movies every day,
you're weakening your mental powers and capacities, not strengthening them. And reading is a great way to engage your mind. And because what happens is when you're reading books, you stimulate different parts of your brain, and you even start to use your imagination, which is one of the most powerful kind of mental faculties that we have as human beings. And even just to touch a little bit upon the power of imagination, if you think about it, throughout history, everybody who did something to have some kind of impact on the world, initially, whatever it is they did, let's say for example it was the people that started flying first, the Wright brothers for example, that invented, there was lots of people trying to do it, but they were the first ones to do it. It started as an idea. They used to imagine themselves flying for a long period of time, and then they kept trying, and eventually it happened, and the imagination is such a powerful thing that we have, but most people are using it against themselves. Most people are imagining what they don't want, or using their higher mental faculties against themselves, And it's important that people kind of understand that as a human being, you're Allah or God's highest form of creation on this planet, right? And what is it that separates you from animals is the higher mental faculties that you've been given. Things like your imagination, your reason, memory, will, intuition, all of these things that we've been given. And we've been given, subhanAllah, like it's phenomenal when you think about it. Like if I was to ask you, other than free will, what is the main difference between human beings and animals?
Say nothing. Sleep.
Okay.
They go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
They breathe, obviously, like us. Other than free will.
Yeah. Other than free will, I'll tell you what it is. So other than free will, any animal on the planet is completely at home in their environment, right? Whether it's cats, dogs, elephants, whatever, they're at home in their environment. Human beings are not at home in their environment. Human beings are disoriented in their environments because human beings have been given the capacity to create their own environments.
Okay, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and we've been given this creative ability by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think it's important that we learn more and more about it and begin to use it to make a positive change or a positive difference in the world, So yeah, imagination is very powerful. Albert Einstein said that imagination is more important than knowledge, because even knowledge has its limits, but there's no limits on imagination. And this is so important that people imagine a better version of themselves rather than keep imagining all the problems that they had in the past and all of the traumatic experiences that they've been through. Start imagining yourself being confident. Start imagining yourself making a difference. And you're going to begin to move in that direction. Because if you think about it, how did you learn to walk? As a baby. Like for example, your son now, mashallah, he's looking at you walking. and he's using his imagination to imagine himself walking. And then he tries. So he sees the people around him walking, and that's what he wants to do. He's imagining himself walking. So he's going to imagine himself walking, and then he's going to try, and he's going to fall down. And he's going to go through that process for a long period of time until eventually a day will come where he'll be able to walk. You see the process, how it works, you know? And that's the process that all of us went through as children. You know, we started off not being able to even lift up our own heads. And then we did that. We you know, after a while mastered that. Then we could roll from side to side. Then we could crawl. Then we could walk. But, you know, I think one of the problems for a lot of people is they get to a certain level or a certain stage in their life and they feel, well, I know enough now. I don't need to learn anything more. There's nobody that can teach me anything anymore. And I'm happy and comfortable to just begin to create a comfort zone at a certain level. But what happens is that when you get to that conclusion, you actually stop growing. And like I mentioned earlier, when you stop growing, you start very, very slowly, very subtly declining. You know, and your brain, even from a psychological point of view, your brain craves novelty. Your brain is designed to grow. There's something that psychologists call neuroplasticity. I'm not sure if you heard of that term before. That, contrary to what psychologists used to believe, that the brain is fixed and the way that you are is the way that you are, that's been disproven now. That the brain is very much malleable. It's very much designed for growth. And that growth is never meant to end until the day that you die. You can keep growing and developing your mind, you know? And like your mind actually makes physical changes internally as you grow and develop. I remember reading in a book one time, it was talking about what is the most difficult exam in the world, and that's to become a taxi driver in London, or what they call a cabbie, you know. Apparently it's one of the hardest exams in the world, because London, it's such a massive city,
it's huge.
and the roads they're not like in America, you know, like straight like this and straight like this. It's a very complex city in terms of all the roads and stuff like that.
It's like the city centre to an extent, Dublin City to an extent, but wider,
much bigger and much more complicated. So apparently it's a very, very difficult exam to pass, and you need to study for a long period of time to pass that exam. So there was a group of psychologists that did research on people over a number of years, people that became cabbies. So they did scans on their brains.
Oh yeah, I know that. I remember this.
Before they did the exam and before they started working at cabbies. So let's say, for example, they did a scan on their brain before the exam, then that person passed the exam, and let's say they worked as a cabbie for 3, 4, 5, 10 years, and then they scan their brain again after a period of time to make a comparison, to see was there any difference, right? And they could actually see that the part of the brain which is responsible for navigation expanded significantly. Physically, it grew over that period of time. The part of the brain which is responsible for navigation. So it just goes to show that this effort or deliberate practice in your field is actually
as a physical
this physical change is happening in your brain, and that's not meant to end. It's meant to continue.
That actually reminds me of another experiment remember in biomedical science. We were studying one of our modules. Sorry, neuroscience, not biomedical science. The lecturer was telling us that they done an experiment on a cat. A cat was newborn, they covered one of its eyes. So what happened is, eventually over time, this eye became very strong and the cat became blind in this eye, although it was born natural, normal. You know what I mean? Both of its eyes working. Why? Because it stopped using this eye, then neurons stopped growing. You know what I mean? You know, like stem cells, they stopped. Exactly, you know, they stopped growing for that eye, so the cat went blind. So it supports what you're saying, exactly. There's a physical change. If you stop using, or if you increase stimulating your brain, you know, your neuroplasticity is gonna, you know, increase as well.
100%.
And on the contrary, if you don't, it's gonna go downhill.
The mind is very, very powerful. I believe it's the most powerful thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And we need to treat it with respect and understand it's an amana. And it's what separates us from animals. And we were given such a powerful piece of machinery to do something with it, you know? So, and everybody has one. But how you use it will determine largely the quality of your life, you know? And I think, unfortunately, for many people out there, you know, their mind controls them, not the other way around. They do not control their own minds. Their minds control them. unfortunately. There's many people like that haven't mastered their own mind. And, and it's important that people kind of understand that there are a lot of people out there that want to influence how you think and how you see the world, So you have to kind of protect your mind and protect the information that goes into it, because your subconscious can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. It doesn't know the difference. It will accept whatever you feed it. And I remember listening to one of my mentors over the years, and one of the most important things that I remember him saying is the value of standing guard at the door of your mind every day, protecting your mind. What information is being put into your mind, because based on the information you put in, that will determine how you behave. So if you change what you're putting into your mind, it's definitely going to change your behavior in the long term.
It reminds me of the quote. They say you are what you read, or you are what you watch.
And we become our conversations as well. And I would see, going back to the point that we spoke about reading a little bit earlier on, we become our conversations. If you're reading a book, you are essentially having a conversation with the author, So, and most authors out there are great people that have significant knowledge to teach, or valuable lessons, or they have interesting stories to tell. And they've put all their best ideas and experiences all together into a book that we can buy for €10 or €20 on Book Depository, and it gets delivered straight to your house. I actually shared something earlier on. I've done a post on Instagram, and it's just a picture of me reading a book, and just trying to encourage people to pick up the habit of reading, because I know how much of a positive impact it's had on me. And the first thing that I said is, a single idea from within a book is enough to completely change the course of your life. That's all it takes sometimes to change everything. One idea in one book. The question is, which book will that be? What page? What chapter? Allahu A'lam. You have to kind of...
You go and read
look,
and...
You have to find it yourself, But if you seek, you're going to find. But if you're not seeking, you'll find nothing.
If you want to if you want to avail of your coaching services, do we contact you on Instagram, phone, or do you have a website?
Instagram is a good way. So I have a business page. It's eliteperformance_coaching. People can find me there, or my personal page is just my name, Khalil Ben Mohamed.
جزاك الله خير أخي خليل. بارك الله فيك. ما شاء الله ما شاء الله. Fountain of wisdom. والله بلش يا أخي.
I feel like I've been coached. A few things I need to work on.
Oh, definitely, bro. And the first thing is for me, my sleeping pattern, bro. And organizing my time. And I think it gives it away today, with how, like we've agreed to do the podcast at 6, and subhanAllah, we started shooting an hour and 10 minutes later. Subhanallah.
Thank you very much, guys, for the opportunity. And Assalamu
alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.